I would just like to open the space with a land acknowledgement. The RIA acknowledges that we are on the traditional territory of the Attawandaron, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. The RIA is situated on the Golden Tract, which is a land promised to the Six Nations that includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. So thank you and welcome again to today's event, People Living with Dementia Share Their Wisdom. This is actually the final of a 3-part series that's been hosted by MAREP, which is the Murray Alzheimer Research and Education Program, one of the programs at the RIA. So I did want to just take a moment to share a bit about MAREP for anyone who might not know about it. And MAREP is a research and education program. And the goal is to enhance well-being for individuals impacted by dementia. So of course, this includes people who are living with dementia, as well as care partners, healthcare providers, and members of the community. And there's a few key principles at MAREP that we truly believe in. The first is that people living with dementia must be meaningfully involved in decisions affecting their well-being, that people living with dementia can continue to grow, learn, and make valuable contributions, and that understanding dementia requires learning about dementia from the perspective of people who are living with it. So for our first 2 events, we heard from panelists from across Canada who are living with dementia, and they shared very openly and honestly about their experiences. Had some really great conversations, a few good laughs along the way. So we're just really excited about today's event and to have the opportunity to hear from 7 new panelists today who are living with dementia. We also wanted to acknowledge that some of the topics we discussed today might come as a relief and be empowering for some, and other topics might be a little bit heavy or uncomfortable. So if at any point you're feeling overwhelmed, or if you'd like more information, we are providing a few links in the chat to different resources or different organizations that can provide support. So those are all of our housekeeping items and things we wanted to talk about right off the bat. So with that, I think we can go ahead and get started. And I'd like to start by introducing our moderator for today, Myrna Norman. And the whole concept and idea for this event came from Myrna. So the idea of having a panel where all the panelists are living with dementia, so we really have an opportunity and a chance to hear from them directly in their own words. For those of you who haven't had the pleasure of meeting Myrna, she is an incredible advocate living with dementia, and I'd say just an all-around lovely person. She's been a key partner on several different projects here at the RIA and different committees, and well beyond that, she contributes to a lot of different initiatives, and it just, whatever she's doing, she always brings such great passion and energy and ideas to the group. So we're really thankful and happy to have you here today, Myrna, as our moderator. And with that, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Emily. We're going to have this more often, just so that I can have Emily say all these wonderful words, particularly when I'm having a bad day. Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad you're all here. I see so many faces I know and many that I don't. I wanted to start by saying to Danielle and to Emily, you made my dream come true. I've been wanting this to happen for so long. Just us, about us, nothing without us. You know how that goes. I've obviously forgotten. So Danielle and Emily and Murray Alzheimer's Research and RIA, God, thank you so much. Right from my heart. Okay, enough of the tears coming. We better get on before the tears come. I usually start with a bit of a poem. I'm going to do the same today. Our panel of people with dementia, sharing their wisdom, giving of themselves, hopes to educate, emancipate, and laugh. We are opening the door to help you understand and accept us without sadness. Let's reimagine dementia. Let's find the joy. Help us to be participants and not idly sitting by. This is a choice. Let's make it here and now. And I want to thank each and every panel member that's been for the first 2. And I want to thank Paul Lee, Jerry Gosley, Kathleen Vanderleiden, Stephanie and Ron, Candy, Brenda, and Rose. I quit with the last names because it was taking too much breath or something. Paul, let's start with you. You have like a minute to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everybody. Paul Lee, last name is spelled L-E-A because I'm different. I have vascular dementia. I have since 2010. I live well, I live alone, and I use technology to keep me safe and also active.
Thanks very much, Paul. Jerry, tell us about yourself.
Okay, I've been retired for 22 years, and a few years ago, I noticed that I was starting to have some difficulty remembering things that I should be remembering, and the fact that dementia runs in my family. My mother, sister, brother all have had dementia, and my brother's the only one that's still alive, and he's currently in a home. He's a few years older than I. So I went to the doctor in January, and I was diagnosed with MCI, mild cognitive dementia. And so Myrna and I have been on a committee for probably a couple of years, I guess, and there's probably a dozen of us now on that committee, and we meet every 3 or 4 months, and so that's sort of enlightening. And these 3 sessions during the summer has been very enlightening for me. And so I think that's about it. Do you want anything more?
We'll learn more as we go along, Jerry. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Kathleen.
I'm Kathleen Vanderlinden, and I was diagnosed with young early onset dementia at 54. So that was 4 years ago. Well, early onset, yes, and vascular dementia. And I had a stroke at 39. And I've done a lot to advocate for us all, and I have 2 sons, so yeah.
Great. Thank you, and thank you for your advocacy. Stephanie and Ron. Stephanie is wearing a couple of hats today. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Ruxall, the spouse of Ron Ruxall, who was an entrepreneur and started feeling crappy way back in his early 40s, but was eventually diagnosed at the age of 48 with Lewy body dementia. He is currently 55 now. He struggles though with this kind of stuff. He doesn't like being put on the spot. So we went over these questions earlier, and I'll be advocating his words for him going forward.
Thank you, Stephanie. Candy,
Yes.
how about you?
Okay. I had no signs of memory stuff or dementia. I was ill in the hospital in a coma. And when I came out of the coma, they said I had a rip in my brain, and they were seeing dementia characteristics associated with it. So that's was the start for me. And that was in, I got released from the hospital 2018. And I have, one of my favorite roles in my life is I'm a grandma. My oldest granddaughter said to me, Grandma, when you came home from the hospital and I talked to you, you were missing a part in your eye. And that's not like that anymore. So I feel like, you know, I'm doing pretty well. I'm pretty happy with progress.
Thanks for that, Candy.
Okay.
Miss Brenda, I bow down to you. You've done so much. Go ahead. You're muted.
Now I'll start again. I was diagnosed when I was 53. I was still working, so I had known for at least a year or 2 before that something wasn't right. And I was diagnosed at that time with Alzheimer's / vascular dementia, but we dropped the Alzheimer's part of it, and that's just probably just vascular dementia. because I had a history of stroke. My first stroke was when I was 41, and then I had a second one, I don't know when, and then I've had some several TIAs.
Wow. Rose.
Yes, my name's Rose Ong, and I have vascular dementia. I've known that I've had dementia for about 15 years now, but it took a good 12 years before I had the actual diagnosis.
Wow. Yeah, it's tough, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm going to switch things around a little bit, and I'm going to say, Paul, have you ever been lost?
As a matter of fact, I have.
Share that with us.
Okay, well, when I go, I walk a lot. When I go out to my grocery store or Shoppers Drug Mart, I always have a specific route that I go. I don't deviate from that because I'm a person of habit. This one day, I don't know why, but I decided to take a different street. And after a couple of minutes, I realized that I don't recognize anything, and I started panic. So it was a nice day, and I sat down on the sidewalk. People walked by me. They didn't say hi, how are you doing? You know, high five or anything like that. They just walked by, didn't say anything. I was there for I guess about 4 hours, and my neighbor came up and asked me what I was doing sitting on the sidewalk, and I said I want to go home. So long story short, I was only 3 blocks away from home.
Wow.
And I have an iPhone, and I use it to like I'll type in the address where I'm going, and then I go to Street View, and then I go up and down the street so that I recognize it. When I go there, I don't panic. This particular day, I did not have my phone with me. Otherwise, I would have been able to find my way home.
Yeah. Somebody once told me that we should have a list on our door that heads out of our home that says, did you remember keys, cell phone, and whatever else it is.
Yeah.
Jerry, have you ever been lost?
Well, I guess I have in my younger years when I've been fishing or something like that. But you know, you're in strange places, you're out in walking creeks and whatnot, and so you decide to take a shortcut or a different route, and you're sort of, after you've been out there for an hour, you realize you're back where you started from. So, but as far as dementia and the recent 30 years, I haven't been lost, no.
Good, good. A quick story for me. My husband and I were fishing in the South Kootenays, and we drove and drove and drove, and finally somebody stopped us and they said, "Are you Canadian?" We said, "Oh yeah, of course." And they go, "Well, do you know you're in Oregon?" We had no idea. That's really getting lost. Kathleen, have you ever been lost?
Okay. Yes, I have. I took a bus to get somewhere. I forget now, but I was on the bus, and it went around a different way because of construction. So it was the route around which I knew for years and years, and I didn't recognize anything. And so I got off the bus freaking out. I walked and walked and walked and still didn't recognize anything. And I started crying, and luckily I had my phone, and I called my husband, And he came to pick me up and he said, you don't recognize this? No, and it was so close to home too. I should have known my way, but I just blanked out.
Yeah, it's frightening, isn't it?
Yes.
Stephanie, has Ron ever been lost?
Yeah, actually his lost because he doesn't tend to want to leave the house afraid of getting lost, or that he wakes up most mornings not knowing where the bathroom is. So he keeps thinking that he's in his house that he grew up in on Saunders Street. And so when he wakes up and the bedroom doesn't look like his childhood bedroom, he has a bit of a panic attack at first. He stands up and then wanders into the dining room and then goes, okay, yeah, the bathroom's right through the dining room and into the bathroom. But he said that most mornings he wakes up and he never tells me, but he feels he has a bit of a panic attack type thing where he doesn't know where he is.
Wow. Candy, have you been lost?
I've only had one really scary episode. I've had moments where I wake up in the morning and I look around and, oh, all our art is on the wall in our bed. And I thought I was someplace else. But when I initially in this whole thing, I was driving one day before they took my license away. And I was in a parking lot and I couldn't remember, I didn't have any idea how to get out of the parking lot. And I couldn't remember how to start my car. And I phoned my daughter and granddaughter and I was just hysterical. I was crying my eyes out. I drove to their house and was just so upset. And my granddaughter said to me, Grandma, look at all the things you did right. You knew to phone somebody, you knew how to, you came here and like, oh yeah, okay, good.
Wow, what a positive story to come out of a scary moment for you.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Brenda, have you ever been lost?
Actually, I had two different circumstances. One was before I was diagnosed, and I was sitting in a parking lot in my vehicle, and I knew where I was, and I knew where I was going, but I couldn't remember anything in between on how to get from point A to point B. And I just stayed there, and then eventually it came to me, and I was okay. The second time was at night, and I was on foot in an area that close to my sister-in-law, so it wasn't an area that I was used to. And I told her I was just going down to the store, and it was just like half a block away. And I went down to the store, picked up what I wanted, come out of the store, turned left and started walking, and realized at that point, I didn't know where I was. But when I was younger, I knew this area very, very well. And I panicked at first. And then I thought, and I'm looking around, and then I saw lots of lights a couple blocks down to my left. And I can remember, I thought, if I go where the lights are, it's probably someplace I know better. Don't know why I did it, but that's what I did. And I got down there, and all of a sudden it came to me where I was. And then as I'm walking back to my sister-in-law, I ran into my sister-in-law looking for me. But both scenarios, I was very fortunate that my memory got jogged, and I was able to continue on. The second one was a little more scarier than the first, but obviously when I saw my sister-in-law, I felt a great sense of relief knowing that they came looking for me pretty quickly.
That's cool. Rose, what about you? Have you ever been lost?
Many, many times. I think that's why I no longer want to go to shopping malls or crowded places like churches or restaurants. I can't really understand how someone could get lost in a Mandarin restaurant, but I have. And I've taken the wrong turn or misunderstood signs. I've also seen the inside of too many men's rooms to recall the number. So that's about it.
Thanks, Rose, for sharing that. I think the one thing some of us might forget when we're maybe risking something, is the people that are out looking for us are just filled with, I've done it several times, just haven't left a note. And my goodness, a lot of people care for us and worry so much when we can't be found right away. Thank you all for sharing that one. Paul, do you have a driver's license? Did you give it up or did the doctor take it away?
Actually, no, I don't have a driver's license. In 2010, sorry, 2009, I had a massive stroke, and it literally, I mean, literally killed a quarter of my brain. It was 6 months later that I was diagnosed with vascular dementia, but I had my car, and I got in, and I drove it out of the parking lot, maybe about 100 feet. It took me a half hour to back it back up and put it back in the same spot. I was scared, and I didn't want to hurt anybody, especially myself. So I let my license lapse and I sold my car. So right
Good for
now I
you.
take transit.
Good for you, Paul. That's so good. So
Yep.
thoughtful of yourselves' health and people around you. Kathleen, do you drive?
No, I had my license taken when I had my stroke. And because everybody thought I wasn't going to make it. So, but I did make it, and I'm fighting. And yeah, and I don't want it back. For somebody else, I would feel terrible if I killed somebody or whatever. So it was very hard because I had to start asking for, a lift to the grocery store or whatever. And that was difficult.
Yeah, it is hard, but congratulations for you, because that's really, it's hard, and good on you. Stephanie, does Ron drive?
No, he hasn't driven since 2016. And it's because me as the caregiver, I was adamant that I didn't feel safe being in the car with him. When we were teenagers and early 20s, I could sleep in the car. I mean, he was the best driver in the world. I had no concerns. But in that last 2 years before he was diagnosed, I found him dozing at the wheel a lot or not making his corners as well as he used to. So I became the one white knuckling the passenger side. I felt like I was the driving instructor wanting to hit that driving instructor brake that wasn't there. So he didn't get it taken away. But last year, which is interesting, or 2 years ago, just before COVID, because it was the last time we went into the family doctor's office in 2019, Ron said, "What about me driving?" And the doctor said, "Well, he didn't take it away from me." He says, "How do you feel about driving?" He says, "I think I'd be okay." He says, "Well, I don't know if I would want to run into you on the road. I'm not worried about you feeling you know how to drive, but I worry about you hurting somebody else or hurting me." But he didn't take it away from him. And then after that doctor's appointment, we went right from the doctor's appointment. Ron wanted to go right to Service New Brunswick and turn in his license to get a photo ID. Because that was part of why he was why he held on to his license, was the idea that it was an ID, like a driver. So we got a photo ID done instead. So that's how it happened. They really don't like taking them away in New Brunswick, the licenses. So they really want people to make that decision for themselves.
Yeah, that's for sure. And it's kind of sad because, if I were driving and hit somebody, I wouldn't even have insurance because a person with dementia doesn't get covered. Candy, what about you? Do you drive or did you drive?
No, I don't drive.
Did
And
you
I
drive?
really found it difficult. I've always been the driver. I've had a car since the day I turned 16. I've never had to ask anybody to take me anywhere and now my husband does all the driving and I look around and see all these things that I haven't seen before. I'm just thrilled at lots of the stuff. So I see the positive.
Excellent. Wow. Brenda, I know you used to ride a motorcycle, girl.
Yes, I did. And I still have my license. I took it for one more trip just down the road and back. But when I was diagnosed, that was in 2000. Fortunately, in our area, they had a special program set up for persons with dementia or other disabilities where you could go and get assessed.
Yeah.
But it was very expensive. It was at that time, it was over $500. But I went and had it and I had no problems. But one of the things I always did, because I was conscious that it could happen, was every time before I got in my car, I'd say, can I drive today if my granddaughter was with me? Now, I never had her, ever took her in the car, but that was the question I always asked myself. I said, would I drive today? And there was a couple times where I felt I was a little too foggy in the head and I didn't. But I wanted, and so for a few years, I paid over $500 each year to get that test. And when I went, and I don't know how long I drove afterwards, because I don't know when I decided to give it up, but I decided that my driver's test was coming up and I was debating on whether I should take the test or not. And I decided to give my car to my daughter-in-law because hers was not working very well and she got stranded a few times with my granddaughter. So I just gave her my car, and I thought it would be easier if I didn't have a car.
Yeah.
But I still had my license, which is weird. But that allowed me to graduate myself, but not actually drive anymore. And because I wanted to give it up myself, I thought it would be easier, and it was easier. I started being a passenger and learned to be a passenger, where I always drove everybody everywhere. So that worked very well for me to learn to become a passenger first.
Thanks, Brenda. Thanks for sharing. It's difficult. I didn't give up my license. My doctor pulled mine about 8 years ago. And I was like all of you, drove everybody around, always had the grandkids. And of course, at the time, I was not pleased. But after a week or so, I thought, thank heavens, he knows more than I do. And if I were to fall asleep at the wheel or go off focus, I could do somebody harm. So that was a really tough question. I want to thank you all for taking the time to listen or to respond to it. Now we're going to go into a real emotional, tough question. I want to know how much thought and preparation you've all given to how to cope with things like raging, like incontinence, like sundowning. How have you thought them through about how you're going to cope with that? How many of you have respite care or somebody that comes in regularly, or family that comes and helps? I know it's hard, but by answering this question, you will do so much to help others that are watching. Paul, would you be ready to answer that?
Yeah, I'm ready to answer that. I'm a special person. I'm unique. I've been told that because I was diagnosed when I was 58, and I'm the type of person I don't like the word no. I don't like saying you can't do this, you can't do that. So for 10 years, I retrained my brain. I worked it, I exercised it, word search. I redid my place, and I had many problems. And I thought about each situation. I thought about how to get around it and all that. So first of all, I don't have any problems with continence. But what was the other?
Rages?
Rage?
Yeah,
I don't have rage problems. What I do have is agitation. And I found out what this action was, because there was a guy who was like 6'6" and 260 pounds, and I pissed him off. And he looked at me and said, "You're just a little guy. Stop." Anyway, long story short, I told my doctor, and now I'm on what's called sertraline, and it controls my agitation. So I don't have rage, but I have that.
excuse me. What was the name of that drug?
Sertraline, SCRTRALINE. Sertraline.
Good. Thank you very much, Paul, for sharing that.
Okay.
Those things are tough, aren't they?
Yeah.
Jerry, yeah, they're tough. Jerry, what about you? Have you thought about incontinence, and have you thought about how you're going to cope with rages and sundowning?
As a cancer survivor, I haven't had any of those issues through my cancer treatment, which a lot of people do, I understand. And so I guess I haven't really given it any thought about what's going to happen when I reach that point in my life. But I suppose I should start thinking about it and get ready for to deal with it when it happens.
Yeah, good choice. Don't let it sneak up on you and go bang. Think about it beforehand.
Yeah.
Kathleen, please share with us your thoughts on this subject. You're muted.
No. Yes, I have. For incontinence, I have to wear diapers now. And that was really difficult for me because, you know, you like to go on your own and stuff. And as far as I don't have rage, but what was the other thing you said?
Sundowning.
I have sundowning a bit. And as far as is sundowning, do you mean I forget what it is exactly.
Yeah. Oftentimes later in the day, and they think maybe it's got something to do with as the light.
Yes.
Become a bit agitated.
Yes, I do. That happens around 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
I get very tired and I find it hard to find words and everything.
Yeah.
And then one thing I've noticed lately is the idea I go to bed and I have terrible night tremors.
Yeah.
And they're awful, absolutely awful. And they seem so real, and I wake up and I think, no, wait a minute, no, because I wish I knew how I could just say that isn't real, don't worry about it.
Yeah. But
I can't. And yeah.
You know, Kathleen, that's such an important thing to share with our audience. It really is, because so many people do have those kinds of issues. Thank you. Stephanie?
Hi. We didn't do a lot of pre-prep. I think for us, an incident happened that made us go, whoa, I think we need to take a step back and start doing some prep. As for continence or incontinence, we do have some, I call them some briefs in the house, which are the cloth, paper, underwear or pull-ups that he'll wear. But for him, it's mostly related to the Lewy bodies because he can go from periods of constipation to periods of major diarrhea. So we will have the pull-ups. We have the pull-ups in the house for that, or the briefs. But we never really worried about the sundowning and the rage. They do occur occasionally, but we have medication that the doctor has helped us with helping control that. But what happened was back in March, we had the floors redone in our house, the hardwood floors, and we stayed at the hotel, which is like 4 blocks from our house. And I took my young daughter to the pool she wanted to go swimming, and it was around 7 p.m. And so the new environment with this and the sundowning created a real cocktail of anger. And so no matter what medication I gave him after that, he couldn't settle. So at midnight, with floors stinking in the house, we went back to the house and slept at our house because by midnight, we were still not. So now I know that between like 4 o'clock and he goes to bed around 7:30, I need to be there, or a caregiver that he knows needs to be in his environment, just for that reassurance and that calming effect, that leaving him alone doesn't work anymore. And he's aware of it. And he's even saying, well, can we ever travel again? Like, is this something now that traveling is going to become impossible? So I don't think I answered all of your question, but I think I did touch.
Yeah.
That's what his answer was. He says, we don't travel to hotels anymore. So that was a part of that, right?
Yeah, I love the information you gave us. Thank you. Candy.
So I haven't done a lot of thinking on that. I'm a counselor, a social worker. I've spent my whole life helping people set paths for themselves and improve. And I hear myself talking to myself and saying, okay, let's plan this and stuff. So I don't feel overwhelmed by it. I feel like I can manage this, and I have lots and lots of support in my life. So I'm glad to talk about it and think, okay, that's something that I haven't put a lot of energy into. But thank you.
No, thank you. Brenda.
Yes, in the beginning, I wouldn't have called it rage at the point, but that's probably the better adjective to describe what I was going through. And it wasn't, I was getting upset in a store by a customer in line that was ahead of me, and how management was treating that person in a wheelchair. And the more he was giving that person a hard time, the more I became frustrated. And when I got up there and it was my turn, I could feel my fists closing, and I put my hands on the counter, and I knew what was next. I was going to vault over that counter. I'm not sure I would have made it, by the way, but that was the intent in my head. And for some reason or another, I demanded to speak to the manager. And when the manager came, I explained what was happening, and what that person had done to me had actually was a double charge on my visa, which I had to get straightened out, because he thought, well, I'll fix her, right? But after that, I did get on medication that kind of leveled me out, and that story hit my mother before I got home from shopping. My mother had already heard the story about what happened at Walmart.
Wow,
So
small town.
Yeah, well, it is a small town, but it was also, I didn't recognize the person because sometimes I don't recognize people. And it was one of my mother's best friends. So, but I'm a proactive person in general. So most of what happens to me, Some of the stuff I was expecting because of my age is creeping up there. So I was expecting some things anyway. So those things are not, and part of it is incontinence. But I just found ways to handle it. I'm an introvert, so it's easier for an introvert to stick around the house more, because I'm quite comfortable doing that, being on my own and spending time with myself. So, but mostly that's what I do is when I know something's going on or my body just doesn't feel right, I look at answers to what can I do through diet or exercise or whatever things I have to take on. I try to get back on track with my diet and so on to help different things that are happening to me.
Good for you. And you've passed that information on to a lot of people through your Bias for Us books. Rose.
Yeah, I had to really think about this one. My policy is that I try to deal with my dementia one day at a time. And as far as having a plan, I don't think I have one. I know I've had episodes with my husband that, you know, he'll have problems understanding why I did what I did, type of thing. And, you know, I just get kind of frustrated with him because, you know, I just assume that because he knows I have dementia, that he should know that's why I did what I did.
Mm-hmm.
And he says that I tend to raise my voice when I get in that position, and I don't really see it myself, but I would believe him. I do believe him that I probably do raise my voice and all that. I did want to mention too that I did have urinary incontinence, started around the time I was 45. I'm 65 now, so it's been about 20 years, but my doctor put me on medication for it, and I haven't had any trouble with it since then. So,
Wow.
yeah, it's been, the medication was really very good. It was called Vesicare, if anyone's interested. And it worked wonders for me.
Yeah, great. You know, that's such an important point, because before we just assume that it's just a symptom of our dementia, we should get that medically checked out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before I ask you the next question, we need to move about a little bit. So everybody, arms up in the air and wave out loud. Wave your hands. You can do it out loud if you want. Okay, down around your hips. Say, oh. Louder. Oh. And 2 deep breaths. Okay, let's go on. Let's start with Rose this time. Rose, do you have an advanced care plan?
No, I kind of consider myself a little bit too young to have thought of all of that stuff. I'm 65, as you know. I have looked into medically assisted assistance in dying, which is MAID. But I know my husband is probably never going to be okay with that because of our religious convictions and all of that. So we've had a couple of discussions on the topic, but they didn't go the way I'd like them to. So that's all I get to say.
Struggle. Let me just mention to everybody that advanced care plan we should have that from the time we begin to drive at 16. All it means is that should something happen to you, you still have given control in the document for life to go on if that's what you want, for life to end if that's what you want. And it's in my belief, it's my responsibility to have my life the way I want it, and therefore my death. I think it's a responsibility and a right. So advanced care planning is done in every province. It's not for aged, it's for all of us. Brenda, do you have an advanced care plan?
Yes, in fact, even starting out, as I said, I feel being proactive is, I always felt if I get it done, then I don't need it.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that means, but
Yeah.
for sure, I did a lot of that stuff right away. I've had long conversations with both my children on, they have absolutely no doubt on what direction I want to head in. So I've had the legal documentation done a long time ago. I had it revamped again because I lived longer than the doctors had told me I would. Good stubborn streak, I guess. And so I had to redo some stuff. So I kept up to date on that, and for sure, MAID is the next step. My daughter's going to download the forms for me. My problem is going to be able to find a person to, because I know my family doctor will not do it.
Wow, that's a lot, isn't it? We're going to talk about MAID after we talk about advanced care plan. Candy, what about you? Do you have an advanced care plan?
I don't. I have some thoughts on it, and I've talked about it, but I don't have a plan in place. It's still in the process.
Thank you. The advanced care plan is about your health. It doesn't concern itself with your finances, just so that everybody's clear. Stephanie.
When Ron was first diagnosed, we've always had an advanced care plan document with the lawyers from the time we started a will, of what our directives were, when we wanted CPR and when we didn't want CPR. That's always been in our thing. So we've always had that. And when he was first diagnosed, we did sit down with a social worker and looked at MAID. Unfortunately, in New Brunswick, once you have a diagnosis of dementia, MAID is no longer something that we can ask for or do, because we're considered at the time of diagnosis then not capable of making that decision for ourselves. So that came off the table. So because Ron is so young, because of Lewy body dementia, and the risk of aspiration pneumonia being so high, that's probably was something that's going to happen. We have talked about how many times are we going to go through antibiotic treatment for aspiration pneumonia before we say no more, and just let the course of health go where it is. So in our case, we've decided two rounds of antibiotics was all we were going to do for aspiration pneumonia, and then we were going to let things go because of the no MAID. It's a much more painful death than MAID, but in his opinion, it's just going to be something that's going to be repeating anyway, and he doesn't want to spend the rest of his life in hospital.
Wow. I congratulate you and Ron for having those discussions. They're difficult. Kathleen, what about you?
I have looked into MAID, and that's going to be the next step for me.
Advanced care plan?
Yeah, I have, but I'm also feeling like I'm too young to go, but I know I should. I think I really want to do MAID because in Ontario anyway, you can ask for MAID because I'm not so far gone that I'm not aware I could do it.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
So Kathleen, if you were to have, for instance, another stroke,
Yes.
your advanced care plan would tell your doctors and your family how you wanted to be treated.
Okay.
If an 18-year-old boy was in a coma after a serious car accident, his advanced care plan would let his family and the medical medical folks know exactly what he wanted done with his body, whether to keep it alive, whether to let it go, whether to use his organs, all of those things. Jerry,
Okay.
what about you? Do you have an advanced care plan? You're muted.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes, we've got advanced care plans, and we have one daughter, and she has, or we have 3 grandsons, and everyone in the family is well aware of our situation, and we've pretty well taken care of everything. And so it's just a matter of, if it happens, here's what's gonna take place, and everybody knows it. So
Excellent.
it's pretty well in order, I think. And
Good
just
time to
go from
double check, Jerry.
yeah, right.
Thank you. Paul, do you have an advanced care plan?
Not formally. I have talked to my daughter, who is my power of attorney. When I was diagnosed, I was very proactive. I don't know why, but I had my will done up and I made her my power of attorney. But I have talked to her about DNR. And with MAID, I forget who it was, because I have dementia, I'm not eligible for MAID. And I found out that just because my daughter's a power of attorney, doesn't mean she has the power to say, let him live or let him die or anything else like that. So that was kind of news to me.
Okay. Power of attorney is strictly financial.
No, actually, no. My power of attorney is financial, and I'd have to open my safe, but there's 2 power of attorneys.
Yeah, there's
Uh,
2.
Personal care, Paul.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
it.
You
Brenda.
got that, Paul?
yeah.
Okay. Yes, Brenda.
I forgot, I should mention this because this is an important factor too, is to consider the medication you're taking. And that's been an ongoing conversation with my kids, is what medication I would continue taking and what medication I want not to carry on with. And being careful, of course, not to admit a medication that helps relieve pain. So it's all those medications that you, and especially because I've had a history of stroke, do I want to carry on if I have another stroke and it's a severe one? Or, so we've had that conversation. So I would have to, the kids know what to do with the medication, whether I stop taking medication in order to expedite what is going to happen, or. So the medication is really important, especially when it changes.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I hadn't even thought about that before. This time I'm going to ask you to raise your hand. How many of you will willingly go into a long-term care home? Okay, thank you. Now, can I ask you all, what could you suggest to the government, your own government or the federal government, to make long-term care homes something that you would consider gladly? I know that's a tough question and I haven't given you any time to think about it. Let's start with Stephanie. What would you want the government to do?
Well, I think in New Brunswick, the government needs to make the long-term care facilities have a huge day program first, where they can acclimatize and go for the day and just get comfortable and meet people. We don't have that here. So that I think is part of the reason why it's a no way Jose right now in our house about long-term care, is because we don't have that ability to just go in and maybe go for there to have a nice tub bath twice a week and play cards and have coffee or whatever with the residents and other people that are day programmers.
Wow, what a great idea. Rose.
Yeah, I'd like to see a lot more staff than what they have here in Ontario. Our, I don't know, PM or whatever he's called, has okayed a lot of for-profit institutions. And because of that, they have like minimal staff as far as, you know, nurses and, you know, even have a resident doctor or anything like that. There's just nothing. And it was to the point when my father-in-law had to be institutionalized, my mother-in-law spent 12 hours every day in the hospital with him because she didn't trust the staff to meet his needs. And I think that's a really tragic, what would you say, tragic assessment, I guess, of our, of our long-term care facilities.
Great. I'm going to ask one more question and then I want to take questions. Oh, there's Ron. Go ahead, Ron.
Have to hit the right button, Myrna. This is the right Ron you want to talk to?
Yeah, I can see you
Yeah, a
now.
couple. Okay, good. Yeah, no, this whole business of advanced care planning, medical assistance in dying, and long-term care have been major studies for me for the past 3 or 4 years. And for those of you who may not know, and there are no reasons for you to have to know this, I was assessed with mild cognitive impairment 7 years ago. And yes, I have noticed a significant decline. I think in those 7 years, I've moved into what we now describe as Alzheimer's. But there are a number of things I can still do. And I'm one of the people that will profess to everybody that there is a life after assessment. We don't need to quit just simply because we have a label of dementia. There's a whole lot of things that we can do and that we can enjoy doing and we can participate in. Also, there are some legal things that you must do. And you just touched on one of the major things. I can't believe that anybody with dementia would then go into the rest of their life without an advanced care plan. I have seen too much the failings of people with dementia, the people without dementia, who don't take the time to sit down with their family and talk about a plan for the rest of their life. I think anybody over 60 years of age should start thinking about it, because we're not going to live, you're going to live a lot shorter than you have already lived. That's for sure. So advanced care planning is important. And for me, the best guidelines for advanced care planning are free. The Alzheimer's Society of Canada has an advanced care plan outline that's perfect. If you follow your way through that, you can create that even better when you can discuss it with the people who care about you. The other advanced care plan that's also perfect is one that's offered by Dying with Dignity Canada, and that's the premier source of information about medical assistance in dying. Now, I don't want to get too involved here, but we're going to talk, I'm going to get back to this business of long-term care. But we're talking about a few minutes ago about medical assistance in dying. I've applied for it. I was on the national radio. Do you remember Michael Enright in the old days? He was on Sunday morning, CBC radio. He interviewed me about MAID because I was interested. It had just been around. It started in 2016. This was 2019 when he interviewed me. I said I was interested. Well, I got a lot of people responding to me, and I won't go into the whole thing. But you're absolutely right. When MAID was first made legal in Canada, dementia, people with dementia were deliberately excluded. We were considered that with that diagnosis, that we were vulnerable and unable. Well, here I am 7 years later. I don't consider myself unable, and I don't consider myself vulnerable. And I know that there are a lot of people I've met with dementia who are like me. We carry on and do the best we can for every day that we have. We're not unable. Yes, there will be a time when I can't do that, make that decision. But we have a year or 2 or 3, or maybe more if we're lucky, in which you can make that decision. And today, since March 2022, people with dementia can apply. It's a very difficult application, but there's something that Dying with Dignity classifies as track 2. I won't go into the details, but it is possible for you to do that.
Yeah.
I'm working with Senator Pamela Whalen on the review committee in Ottawa, trying to bring in advance requests, which would clear this whole mess up.
Yeah.
But to go back to this long-term care, one of the opportunities I had, I was a volunteer with Dying with Dignity, and there for a few years, we had to have 2 independent witnesses for every request. Well, it's changed now, but in those days, we had to have 2.
Ron, you got 1 minute.
1 minute, I'll do it fast. In those 2 years, I visited over 70 to 80 clients who wanted to have MAID. I was into all kinds of care facilities. And I can tell you quite directly, I live in London, Ontario. I've worked around 100 kilometers around London. The best facilities that I could see for long-term care were what they classify as for-profit. So to get rid of for-profit, you're taking away all the leadership and the best. It's very, very expensive, but it's the best. If you're looking for some of the worst examples that I've seen, have been in so-called government-provided facilities. We have a long way to go with long-term care, but we can't throw away the best because we have a bias about for-profit. Now, I'd be pleased to talk about it at length with anybody, but Myrna, I've taken all your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. We're hoping to get something going on MAID, and we'll let you know in the future. There's a lot of interest. And so we have a responsibility to have a webinar or something to help you understand more about that. The other place you might check is the Canadian Centre for Elder Law. I believe it's in every province, and they will help you with advanced care planning as well. That's one of the committees that Jerry and I sit on together. Okay, this is a really important question. I live in a community of about 80,000. We have a dementia-friendly city. I don't think it does a damn good. I don't see anything that it does to help. And I want you guys to tell me, how can we help the community planners and those responsible for community recreation? How can we help them by offering things we need? One of the things I think we need is, instead of going downtown in every city to have some sort of an event, let's do it at little small neighborhoods, parks. Everybody's got a small neighborhood park where they feel comfortable walking to, but we don't necessarily feel comfortable walking to the middle of the city. So those are the kinds of things, and what kinds of activities. So I'm going to turn to you. I'm going to start with you, Brenda.
I agree that part of the problem with dementia-friendly cities was the fact that they didn't include enough people with dementia to have their input put in the first place. And very few places have actually done that successfully. There's one or two, I think, in Ontario that were successful with it and were the beginnings. But I do think reaching out to the community, smaller community areas is really important, because that's also the areas that we have less services available. So to give an example, I live in Paris, Ontario. I live on a dead-end street. I bought the house before I had my children, so I've lived there since early 70s. And at this point in my life with dementia, I love living on that street, because if one of your neighbors is watching and something happens anywhere on the street, you've got neighbors out there checking on you. And we've had several people on the street with dementia over the years. And one lady could go out walking all the time, because there was always somebody on the street that would see her and go walk with her. And so starting all that in small cities, or you go downtown yourself as a person with dementia, and right off the get-go, you go into a store, you confess that you have dementia. And it is surprising how different they react with you when serving you. The friendship level is right there. They're there to assist you and help you. I think small areas are more community-minded to begin with. And I know I worked on 6 stations of the Grand River for 9 years, and I told him I'd only go and work there for 10 years, and because I didn't want to take anybody's job. I was in my 9th year when I was diagnosed with dementia. And oh my gosh, that 9 years went so fast, because the community was just so awesome. And I was volunteering all these hours, and it was just a joy. So I don't think, I think the idea of starting smaller and building up like a grassroots thing would be awesome.
Wow, thanks, Brenda. Who else wants a stab at this? Somebody else must want, go ahead, Stephanie.
I live in a community of 2,000 people. It's St. Andrews, New Brunswick. For exactly what you said, Brenda, this town is perfect. Everybody in town knows Ron. So if he goes out walking and he ends up sitting on the bench, everybody's offering him a ride home. It's perfect for that. The downside of small communities like this is there are no activities. Mm-hmm. So he feels always at home, because there's no, like the Alzheimer Society in Fredericton does painting classes, and it does music therapy, and it does this and that, but that's an hour and a half away for us. So for us in our community, there's no activities for him to feel included and not feel silly. And so the one thing we are working on is developing with our restaurants sensory spaces, because with Lewy bodies specifically, it's like autism in that sense. Loud noises really irritate. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to get a couple of the restaurants in town to actually have a smaller corner table that's quieter, so we can go out to eat, because going out to eat is not possible often. So that's one thing as a community that we're working on. Colored plates. The one restaurant's getting colored plates. They're putting pictures beside every menu item for those that struggle with reading, and it's going to be in a corner where there's going to be less noise. So those are the 3 things I've asked one of our favorite restaurants to do for us, so we can continue going out to eat.
Could you please send me an email with all that wonderful information? Jerry, you've got your hand up.
Yes, I have my hand up because I have another appointment in about 25 minutes, but so I'm going to have to leave. But as far as your question, I think our committee, the Dementia Advisory Committee that we sit on, Myrna, should lobby the City Hall in Abbotsford and we could go there as a group and discuss issues with the council. We would have to discuss this at committee, make up some points that we want to draw attention to with the city council, and more or less tell them that there's people living in this community that have dementia, and it isn't being recognized by the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. It's coming up, we're coming to an end. We've got about 10 minutes left in this. Do any of the audience members have any questions? Wow, we are so amazing. We've answered every concern you've ever had except for Ron. Ron, go ahead.
I don't have a question, Martin. I'm sorry. I'm still dealing with your last issue. I live in a big city. We have almost 500,000 people in the London area. We have a very active Alzheimer's Society. And as part of our Alzheimer's, we have a special committee called Dementia Friendly Communities. And what we're advocating, and I fully support it, is for us as dementia people to reach out and ask for help, offer to provide advice, work with people on how to do that. Don't wait for it to come to you, go out and do it, and you can create it. For example, we meet with people from the Chamber of Commerce who want to do something to create a dementia-friendly community and how they can do that. We meet with the Business Council. I was speaking on Monday to a group of community leaders, business leaders, and how to do that. We set up working committees where we can come up. When I say committee has to have dementia people on the committee or it doesn't qualify. But we set up working committees to talk about how we can do this. We have 5 recreational areas, for example. We have people on each recreational council. We have people on the library council. We have all kinds of ways to be able to do that. And yes, there are tremendous advantages in a so-called small community. But the larger community is really a collection of small communities. And we can do so much if we're willing to go and reach out and say, hey, I've got dementia. I need some help. Can we talk about it? And there's all kinds of wonderful ideas that come up. Stephanie, I love the idea of your restaurant setting aside a quiet corner. If you don't have to have dementia to need quiet in a restaurant today, but for us with dementia, it's a wonderful idea and so simple. And so many of these things are simple. If we sit down and talk about the problem, and how we can handle it, not just in a humanitarian way, but in a business-like way, make it better for everybody.
Thanks, Ron. Always brilliant stuff. Kathleen?
Yeah, I asked at church, can we have a quiet room to go to if things are too wild for us, too loud and whatever? And they said, oh, sure, we didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
And so they put it aside a room with a plug, no, so we can still hear.
Like a speaker.
Yes. And I say, thank you. That is so good. And then we will go back when we're, when we've calmed down enough.
Yeah. That's great. Go ahead, Stephanie. No. Okay, I have one last question. We have 5 minutes, period. If you needed to tell your caregiver or a family member, the thing that you needed help with most. And I want you to be blunt. Caregivers really need to know what you need them to do. So is there one thing that you haven't sort of been able to ask somebody to help you with? I'm just going to leave it open. Can anybody answer that? Like, I need my husband to wash my hair. I need him to convince me to have a shower because I hate going in there. The bathtub's getting too dangerous, but I need to tell him because he doesn't want to sort of take over my autonomy, but I need help. And that's really hard to say to somebody. Could you please tell me to have a shower often? Like, you know how hard that is to say? You guys probably thought I was the cleanest person in the world. Now you know different. So it's difficult. So how many of you, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, what does someone do if there is no caregiver and they live alone?
Yeah,
Now, my problem is washing my back.
yeah,
I have a back scrub thing like this, but I have trouble trying to figure out how to go down and do the side and then go, like, I can't do that.
yeah.
So that's my thought.
You know, we almost need another show about people who live alone with dementia because it's a whole new kind of thing that's happening. Stephanie, go ahead.
Can I ask everybody a question?
Sure.
How many of you struggle with that whole bathing thing, with wanting to bathe and making time to bathe? Yeah.
5 of us.
It's
Yeah.
interesting because Ron doesn't like to bathe either. And we've made it a non-issue because he says it aggravates him when I remind him it's been a week or 2 weeks since he's bathed. So for us in our house, it's a non-issue. I just don't say anything anymore because it becomes an agitation. So I appreciate you saying, Marina, that you ask for it. So that's why I was asking how many have that issue.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Rose, the last word.
Okay, have a question for Stephanie. I'm just wondering, do you have like a specific day of the week that he has to bathe?
No.
You don't?
No.
I had just
No.
wondered if that might help.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
No.
So go ahead,
Thank you.
finish off your thought.
No, that's all I had to say about it. I just wanted to ask Stephanie, has she found some way of making it more pleasing? I don't know, whatever.
For a while, a few years ago, what we did is we put a big green X on the calendar for the days that were shower days. But that doesn't work. That hasn't worked in about 4 years. So now, no, it's no issue. It's not an issue.
All right, guys, we have 30 seconds to finish off, or maybe we're already finished. Thank you to Paul and Kathleen and Stephanie and Ron and Candy and Brenda and Rose and all the people that took time out of their busy day to attend. I can't thank you all enough. I think this has been a great service. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Oh
for
wait, Myrna,
hosting
I
it.
just wanted to, if you wouldn't mind, I just wanted to jump in and say thank you so much to yourself as well for bringing us all together today and for moderating such a great panel discussion. And also a huge thank you to all our panelists for sharing so openly and honestly about your experiences and for responding to the questions. I mean, sharing your experience is not easy to begin with, and when it's such a personal nature, it takes a lot of bravery and courage to do that. So we do truly thank you from the bottom of our hearts for being here today and for opening that up to us. And I also just wanted to mention that if you did find some of the topics we discussed today a little bit uncomfortable, if anyone's feeling overwhelmed or wanted some more information, as I mentioned, we would be providing some links in the chat. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that now. And these are some resources or organizations that can provide support. So please feel free to check those out. And from here on, we hope that we hope you enjoyed today and that you left feeling inspired and that you learned something. I know I certainly did. And yeah, we hope to continue having sort of these kinds of webinars and exploring other ideas for potential topics down the road. So if you're looking to join in at a future date, just please stay connected. We're online. We're on Twitter, Facebook. You can also send us an email anytime. So please keep an eye out for future webinars. And thank you again, everyone, for being here today.